So it's a pleasure to be here. First, I have to really say how appreciative I am that Golden West College takes a pioneer role in creating atmosphere and ambience like this. Yes. And not only bringing us all together, but also allowing us to enjoy such wonderful speakers. I'm really in good company. And also the fact that they create an ambience to talk about important issues in the world. And I want to also thank you, my good friend Fran, for giving me this opportunity to be here today. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. All right, so what I'm about to tell you, and it happens in Iran, a country that you hear a lot about in the media, mostly in a negative way. And what I'm about to tell you is not, unfortunately, a positive way. It's also negative. But I thought most of us just hear about Iran. We really don't know where Iran is, and or if we do know where Iran is, we don't know what's going on in Iran in general. Can I have one of those mics that I can walk around with? Maybe that way I can both navigate and... All right, so I'm going to give you a quick tour of Iran, okay? So get ready. You don't need a passport. Thank you. All right, so let's go and talk about Iran. As you can see, Iran on a world map is surrounded by Africa, Australia, also with Europe, and itself is in Asia. It's in the middle of Middle East, and it looks like a cat, as you can see. It's a sitting cat. That's what we call it, the coolest cat. So we call it the coolest Persian cat because it looks like a cat, right? And it's also famous for Persian cat. How many of you have Persian cat? Anybody? Yes, yes, we have Persian cats. They're very sweet, but they're not playful. They just look like decoration. I know. They look good for looking good. All right, so how big is Iran, right? I mean, we hear about Iran a lot and how dangerous Iran is and how dangerous the government is. Well, how big is it really? Well, in comparison to a state in America, it's 4% smaller than Alaska, right? However, it holds 100 times more population than Alaska. Alaska has about 700,000. Iran has 79 million population. But in comparison to land space, is almost as big as Alaska. It's important to know that since the revolution happened in Iran, when I left the country, by the way, I was born and raised in Iran. When I left the country in 1979, the population was 36 million, but today is, as I mentioned before, 79 million. That's an explosion of population. So what this means is Iran uniquely holds 60% of its population under the age of 30. Now, some have dubbed that population as people power because, as you can see, Iran's been again in the news lately for having a lot of its youth arising and demanding democracy. And that kind of movement moved into other countries such as Syria and Egypt, as we all witnessed. So it's a good thing that Iran has 60% population younger than 30, but it also puts a lot of challenge on the government because it has to come up with educational system, educational program, economical job opportunities, which Iran cannot do, unfortunately. Iran also is extremely diverse. Iran is a melting pot. Iranians are not just brown eyes and black hair or brown hair. As you can see, there are blonde Persians like myself. Now, why are you laughing? Because you think I'm not a born blonde? Is that why? Well, if you don't believe me, I can call my mother and she would attest that I was born blonde. No, but seriously, yes, we do have certain regions of Iran, because we're so diverse, have blue eyes, very light skin, and almost European looking. So Iran is very diverse in that way. Iran is also diverse in religion, although majority of are Muslims, but we also have Christians. As a matter of fact, there's some estimates that are about 1 million Christians, including Assyrians and Armenians and Christians. Also, we have, according to the Jewish Federation of Tehran, we have about 28,000 Jewish people. We have 27,000 Zoroastrians, and we have 300,000 Baha'is. And that population is the focus of my talk today. We'll get to that in a minute. So as far as ethnicity, Iran is extremely ethnical, if that's a word. We have Gilanis, Azaris, Azerbaijanis, Mazandaranis, Shirazis, Isfahanis. And when I say ethnicity, and I'm talking about complete differences in customs, traditions, dialogue. So Iran is indeed diverse and a melting pot. So, a little bit of Iran. Now let's talk about the problem of education in Iran. What happened in the beginning of the revolution, 1980s? The Iranian government, today known as the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Iranian government started putting pressure on the minorities. As you saw, we have a diverse group of minority religions and minority people. But what happened is the government started putting pressure on them, and it started to ban the minorities of seeking higher education. And I mean banning, not allowing them. How do they do that? Well, the college application had a place where you had to claim your religion and say what religion you were. And if you wasn't Muslim, automatically your application would be tossed out. Now, for a minute, I'd like you to think about this. Just imagine if tomorrow morning, how many college students do we have in the house? Alrighty, that's a good crowd. So imagine you woke up tomorrow and you just got an announcement on the radio that because you have brown hair, you can't go to university. You have to stop going. And you say, well, that's not my fault. He said, well, tough luck. You cannot go to and seek higher education. That's it. Highest school diploma is all you can do. Well, that's as unfair as telling someone because you're Jewish, because you're Christian, because you're a Baha'i, you cannot go to university, and you have to be thankful that you got a high school diploma. How unfair would that be? Well, that's what happened to the minority religions in Iran. Now, in response to that, this is what the Baha'is did. The Baha'is, for a few years, started thinking about this. 300,000 Baha'is living in Iran, and worldwide, by the way, we have 7.2 million Baha'is. So it's a big crowd, but in Iran they have become minority because of the oppression and all the problems with the government and everything else, because they were banned from working in government institutions, they were banned from teaching, they were banned from being students. So all of that put a lot of pressure on this minority group. So when it came to education, the Baha'is started thinking, what's going to happen to our young children? What's going to happen to our youth if they cannot pursue higher education? We know that is not good, that is not beneficial. That is not good to say to an 18-year-old that this is the end of your education, especially if education is your passion, that you're really, really motivated to pursue higher education. So Baha'is in Iran in 1987, having had to deal with this ban, decided to do something about it. So what they did, and I know this firsthand because a lot of my friends were in the original group of this team that had started this education. So what they did, they started talking among themselves and said, well, we're going to educate our children, but because we don't have a university, we can't go to a university, we're going to educate them in our homes. So they started offering these classrooms. This started with how to, let's say, how to read, literally books, how to do certain skills and bring anybody who had a talent to started teaching other people. It could be cooking, it could be arranging flowers. So in the early 1980s, this just started at home classrooms for youth, to keep them busy, to teach them something, to teach them a skill so they can go out there and get a job. But by 1987, it was clear that there is a need for education in a formal format. So what they did, they invited scholarly people, and all of this, as I'm telling you, this is exactly how it all happened. They invited the scholarly people, they all met in one conference room, and as I heard firsthand from a friend of mine who was sitting in that conference room, they started talking about, okay, are you willing to teach math classes? Are you willing to teach biology classes? Well, some were thinking, well, this isn't going to happen. How are we going to do this? And some were ready to forge forward. So those who were ready to forge forward started what we know today as Baha'i Higher Education Institute, right? So how did this happen? They started having classrooms in people's houses. Imagine somebody's kitchen turning into a biology laboratory. Imagine somebody's living room becoming a classroom where there are 25 students sitting in that classroom, books all over the floor, not enough chairs for these people to sit. Imagine that. And imagine that these students came from all over Iran. These classes were not offered to just people in Tehran. So these classes were being held in Tehran. Everybody had to get on the bus. Now, how many of these kids were killed on the way from their cities into Tehran so that they could attend once a month a classroom taught by a, let's say, former university professor, because the former university professor used to be a Baha'i, no longer could teach at a university. So imagine going to a classroom like that. Imagine mailing your homework to your professor, not thinking whether it's going to get to him, whether it's going to get to her, whether it's going to be in time to be read and to be graded. It would take weeks before you get the homework back to see what you've done. Imagine going to school under those conditions. Now, I'm going to give you another shocking fact. Imagine taking these classes, going to these classes, studying under those conditions, and being told that you're not going to get any credit for this class because this is not an accredited university. Now, I often ask my students whether they're willing to continue education, knowing that there is no paper at the end that says you have now accumulated 36 units towards a higher education diploma. How many of us are willing to go for something we cannot foresee any conclusion to it, or I'm just taking classes. So these kids are going to these classes just to get an education. Imagine getting an education just for the sake of getting an education, not for the sake of getting a grade, not for the sake of getting a credit unit. And that's how these kids started to study. So, today, BIHE, the Baha'i Institute for Higher Education, offers 32 university-level programs. So you're saying, how did it go from people's kitchens and people's living room to a full-blown university? Well, since this was founded in 1987, what happened? The need for more formal educational program was clearly seen by the first original group of people who started these as just classes. So what they did, they started to put together an organization today known as BIHE, a university that is completely online. And I have the privilege of teaching these online classes and working with them as a consultant. So everything is done online. Everything is done on voluntary. We don't get paid. Nobody gets paid to teach at this university. So this institution today continues to not only offer high education, but also to produce students who only earned hours of credit on a piece of paper, and this piece of paper is worth something globally. Because after 20-some years, the entire globe has realized that when people really want to get an education, they have to be given an opportunity to receive that education. So universities such as Harvard, Stanford, Princeton are now offering scholarships to these kids to continue their education here. So a lot of these kids are invited to come to America and finish and get a degree. In some cases, some of these kids are given an opportunity to go into PhD programs. So the whole world is working together to bring this to a reality. Again, everybody that works for this university is on a voluntary basis, and that's the beauty of it. So the majors offered are in science, biology, math, information technology, and it is amazing how this thing started from classrooms that were teaching a skill so people could go and get a job to something that it is today at the same level as any other university. So since that time, BIHE has been run by volunteer faculty and staff and has produced 2,000 graduates of this program. We are doing research in Iran on different topics with the students who are currently enrolled in BIHE, so it is gaining academic scholarly recognition. And the problem still exists. Now, I know that I just painted a beautiful picture of getting an education in Iran, but the problem of the government still exists. So many of these folks who are in Iran and teaching these kids are arrested, put in jail, simply because they want to teach. Now, imagine a world like that only because you want to teach math, you want to teach biology, that somebody says you can't and they're going to put you in jail. Several of these people, as you can see, all the faculty, the administrators, the staff, and the teaching assistants of BIHE that are currently in jail or were in jail and have been released and again continue to teach. So this is what people do when they are put under arrest. Now, this isn't the first time that the Baha'i faith has been a pioneer in bringing education to Iran and Iranians. The Baha'is, 100 years ago, started formal education in Iran. The Baha'is were the group of people who brought television and technology to Iran. Now, I'm not saying that to make Baha'is look wonderful and good. I'm saying that to show that Baha'is are pro-education, because education is the answer to all of our problems in the world. They have always been pioneers, and they will always be a pioneer. Now, at the end, if I have time, I like to show a short video of this phenomenon we call the BIHE.
They can take away the books, they can take away all the equipment, the computers, everything. But the knowledge is in the head, is in the brain. The government can crush our bodies, but they cannot crush the mind and soul.
It's really quite shocking to find an entire community of hundreds of thousands of people to be so systematically excluded from right to education. It is very clear to me that the Baha'i population of Iran is an endangered species.
On the 21st of May 2011, all across Iran, there was a simultaneous raid in homes in the wee hours of the morning. Iranian authorities, plainclothes men, uniformed police barged into homes across the country and started seizing equipment, questioning people. They eventually took dozens of individuals, men, women, youth, in for questioning. So it was a planned attack on the Baha'i Institute of Higher Education. It's really important for the Iranian government to live up to its commitment to uphold justice for all people in the country and to live up to the Islamic values by which it claims to stand. Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to talk about freedom of education globally in the context of the situation that's been developing over the past 30 years in Iran regarding the Baha'i students that are being denied higher education in that country. It was 40 homes of individuals that were linked somehow to the Baha'i Institute for Higher Education. So it was either students or teachers or administrators, and there were dozens of individuals that were taken into custody and interrogated, and some of them remain in detention even today, and solely because they were teaching or learning or administering at the Baha'i Institute of Higher Education.
Education is one of the most fundamental civil rights of any human being within any republic. What the Baha'i Institute for Higher Education has done in Iran is nothing short of a miracle.
Yeah, my father was one of the founders for the Baha'i Institute for Higher Education. The Baha'i faith started about 160 years ago in Iran. And the persecution of the Baha'is basically started with the inception of the faith. Tens of thousands of Baha'is were killed at the time. To date, about 300,000 Baha'is live in Iran.
Baha'is believe in the importance of education, the equality of men and women, in the equality of all people, and that ultimately mankind will live in harmony.
I was born in Tehran, Iran. Being a Baha'i, we had our own challenges growing up. We couldn't have the social life that other kids had. And we were always growing up with the fear that one day they may kick us out of school. So I knew my options are very limited, and at any time I might be stopped from growing or from going further.
My mom was expelled from her job, and my brother was not allowed to continue his education in the university. Same for me, same for my sister, for my uncle, for my aunt. The Iranian government is actually hurting the Iranian culture and Iranian country, the whole country, not just the Baha'i community. A lot of other minorities, a lot of smart people, graduates from universities, they're not allowed. They do not find opportunities in Iran.
When I was in first grade, one of my best...
All right. So in the interest of time, and we're running late, I'm going to stop the video here, but I just want you to think about that. That there's nothing any government or anybody can stop us from doing. If we put our minds together, we can forge ahead and bring not only education, but justice and peace to this world. So once again, I thank you, and I'll be available if you have any questions. We're always looking for faculty or people with expertise who can teach for BIHE. Again, there is no salary, so yeah, it'll be all pro bono. So please see me if you're interested, and thank you so much.